Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jackie Hostler Carmison. I'm the Fish and Game Commissioner and the co-chair of the Tribal Committee. This is the August 12th, 2025 meeting of the California Fish and Game Commission Tribal Committee. Callers and those joining via Zoom have been placed on mute. And when it's time for members of the public to engage in a conversation about an agenda item, they will receive instructions on how to indicate they would like to speak. Please make sure to keep your microphone on mute unless you have been called on to speak. Note also that you have the ability to turn on your video, but it is not required. And now we're going to hear from Ari. I think, Ari, you're going to talk about some technical notes briefly.
Yes, I can get us started if Melissa's not quite ready yet. Okay, you got it. If you're participating in the Zoom webinar and calling in by phone, please make sure that your phone number and your Zoom webinar are linked. If you logged into Zoom first and used the call me option, then that linkage happened automatically. If you're joining by phone only, pressing *9 currently is not working. Staff is aware of this and is working with the department to address it, but it will not be functional today. So if you're on the phone only, it is for listening only today. If you're having technical difficulties with the meeting, please contact FGC at fgc.ca.gov. That's the preferred method. Once more, that is FGC at fgc.ca.gov. Or you can call 916-902-9286 if necessary.
Thank you very much, Ari. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And we do have a quorum. And I would like to turn it off to Melissa to introduce staff, Fish and Game Commission staff, and the CBFW. The joke there is I am the quorum because I am,
Right.
I am the tribal committee and nobody got it. But thank you very much.
We know it. That's what matters.
Yeah.
We know. All right. So I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the California Fish and Game Commission's Tribal Committee. We do have a number of staff who are here assisting in the room and online. From the California Fish and Game Commission, myself, Melissa Miller-Henson, the Executive Director. We have Susan Ashcraft, our Marine Advisor, Ari Corman, our Wildlife Advisor, Miss Kelsey Laird, who is our Executive Analyst, and then our California Sea Grant State Fellow for 2025-26, Carolyn Newell. And then helping us behind the scenes, we have David Haug, who is one of our regulatory analysts. From the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, we have our official tribal liaison to the committee, the department's tribal liaison, Sarah Fonseca. We also have Assistant Chief Chris Stutz from the Law Enforcement Division. I think we have online Jay Rowan, who is Chief of the Fisheries Branch. And then joining us from the Marine region, we have Dr. Craig Schumann and several of his staff who will be introduced as we get to the different agenda items. And then the same for, we have a couple of other items where we have department staff who will be introduced separately from other commission staff. And then for those who may not be familiar with the tribal committee and how it functions, again, welcome. The committee is comprised of up to 2 commissioners. In this case, it's one, Commissioner Jackie Hostler Carmison. Our goal today is informed discussion to guide future decision making, and we need your cooperation to ensure a lively and comprehensive dialogue. We're operating under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, so it's important to note that the committee chair cannot take action independent of the full commission. Instead, the chair makes recommendations to the commission at regularly scheduled meetings. These proceedings are being recorded and will be posted to our website or YouTube page for reference and archival purposes. Items may be heard in any order pursuant to the determination of the committee chair. And requests for regulatory change must be directed to the commission and submitted on the required petition form FTC1, which is available on the commission website and also directly to the staff. However, at the committee's discretion, it may request that staff follow up on items of potential interest to the committee and possible recommendation to the commission. Committee meetings operate informally and provide an opportunity for everyone to contribute to the discussion about agenda items. If you wish to contribute to the discussion on an agenda item, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the chair. If you don't mind, share your name and affiliation, if any. Recognize that time is limited, so please be concise to give others time to contribute. And if multiple speakers have the same concerns or ideas to express coming together as a group, consider appointing a group spokesperson to share those ideas or thoughts. Participants in person are typically called on first, followed by participants joining by Zoom. And feel free to continue contributing to the dialogue as the topic discussion evolves. It's not like a commission meeting where you have one opportunity, walk up to the podium for your 2 or 3 minutes and speak, and then you're done. This is intended to be a dialogue. If you're speaking during the general public comment item, that is a little bit more like a commission meeting, and the subject matter that you present should not be related to any item on the current agenda. Public comment on agenda items will be taken at the time the committee discusses each item. And then please note the nearest emergency exit wherever you're located in the unlikely event of an emergency.
Thank you, Melissa. Very helpful. So the agenda is approved. However, I would like to ask if there are any tribal council, tribal leaders, or tribal representatives, or tribal employees on the call today. If you are any of those, please raise your hand. I see Jessica Gravel. Jessica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Gravel, and I am the Marine Program Manager for Trinidad Rancheria.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. If anyone joins later, then we'll take a moment and introduce that tribal rep or tribal leader. Thank you so much. So let's move to item number 2. And we're going to talk about the annual tribal planning meeting and receive an update and discuss timing for the commission's annual tribal planning meeting. And Melissa, if you would start us off with that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So for those who participated in the tribal committee meeting in May, we had talked about when that annual tribal planning meeting might be held, as well as the content. And there was general support for that meeting being focused on funding opportunities for tribes and tribal communities, especially in light of what's been happening at the federal level and the challenges that tribes are facing, and state government, local government, et cetera, as more and more federal funding is withdrawn or moved for other purposes. And we had talked about the possibility of holding it in early September. We came up across a challenge in that there are 2 major initiatives that the California Natural Resources Agency is working on right now related to California tribes. Due dates for feedback and input and tribal consultations on those initiatives are due the 1st and 2nd week of September. In addition, there's a lot of energy around the annual on September 27, I believe it is the annual tribal gathering at the Capitol.
Native American Day.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of energy by our state partners being put into the planning for that event, et cetera. There's a whole list of things that in the first 3 weeks of September will really creating some challenges. So would like to suggest if we could maybe moving it to October after, the commission meeting is the 8th and 9th, I believe. And or 9th and 10th, and so perhaps a week or two after that, so we get through that commission meeting. And then hold it sometime in mid to late October, if that would be possible. We just, folks were saying they were a little overwhelmed between now and mid-September. And obviously, we don't want to interfere with the 27th.
Absolutely. So the commission meeting you said is October
I think it's
8th and 9th.
I think that's 8th and 9th, 8th and 9th. 8th and 9th, perfect. Yeah, so Wednesday, Thursday.
Is it possible to have it be the day before on October 7th? Possibly. Would that be too hard for staff? Or depending on the agenda, can we have it in connection on one of those days? With the meeting.
The agendas, we're anticipating going to be pretty full, that I could be wrong, so we could take another look at that.
I had it down as a hold.
We're gonna do like a half day,
Yeah.
3 to 4 hours at most. Yeah, well, let me check in with folks and see if we can pull off
Okay.
October 7th.
Okay. If that doesn't work, I'm happy if we can do it remotely. You know, later after the 8th and 9th, that would work for me. It's gonna be tough for me to travel back to Sacramento.
Yeah.
Okay, but if we advertise it that way. Yeah, I think we might get a good response.
And then we would just have staff and some of the presenters. Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's take a look and talk to a few folks and see if we can make this pull off the 7th. If for some reason we can't do that, then we'll look at doing something remotely and check in with you on your calendar.
That sounds great.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yay.
Let's go ahead and move along to our next item. Marine protected area petitions. And I'm going to ask Susan to tee us off. And then I know Dr. Craig Schumann has a lot of amazing information to share as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So happy to lead this off. So this item today is to provide your committee an update on the marine protected area petitions process. The Marine Resources Committee meeting had a meeting in July, and at that meeting discussed the next steps in the evaluation process. So we want to update you on what that discussion was and what their request is for tribal committee specific input that would be able to be shared with the commission tomorrow, and then hand it off to Craig. So the stage that the planning process is at there's 15 remaining marine protected area petitions that were originally submitted at the end of 2023. And the stage that they are at is that the department worked with Ocean Protection Council and commission staff on their development of an evaluation framework for what are the questions that could be asked to look at each of those 15 petitions and all of the individual proposed actions that are in those petitions to evaluate them and develop recommendations. And that all originates to information guidance that the commission provided back in August of 2024. So in your meeting materials for today is a department the department's draft evaluation process. It was updated after the Marine Resources Committee to integrate some specific input from that Marine Resources Committee meeting. So that is available for you today, as well as a copy of a presentation that Craig will give. Essentially, the department, just look at this. So the department has this proposed, they're calling it a proposed evaluation framework for bin 2 petitions. And it provide, it asks questions related to what kind of considerations the commission wanted to see. And through public input and discussion, the Marine Resources Committee identified a few clarifying refinements and additions to the draft framework and requested them incorporate them. At today's meeting, the department has provided the revised draft evaluation framework with the changes that the Marine Resources Committee requested, and specifically what you'll see is the framework includes questions related to identifying tribally focused petitions. And the department did its best to apply those questions to the existing 15 petitions to come up with a draft list. The MRC requested specifically that the tribal committee provide that guidance to determine which petitions are considered tribally focused and whether those petitions should be grouped separately from the other petitions during later discussions of evaluations and the petitions, or whether you wanted them to be prioritized first during the days that various petitions are discussed. And we'll talk about how to group those petitions after. So first today, Craig will give a presentation with an overview of the evaluation framework, the questions that it currently includes for identifying tribally focused petitions, to support that discussion. And then after that, Caroline Newell, our Sea Grant Fellow, is going to share perspectives on how the commission may want to organize and focus the discussions around the topics, using a bioregional approach. So why don't we turn it over to Craig, and then we can take it from there.
Craig, will you be able to share your screen on the presentation?
I'm hoping my presentation will
It is.
magically appear.
It will.
Okay.
Mr. Haddock has those magic fingers.
There we go. Perfect. Well,
Another magic person.
good afternoon, Commissioner Hostler-Carmison.
Dr. Schumann.
Everyone, I'm Craig Schumann, Marine Region Manager, the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Next slide, please. I'm going to give a brief overview of the process of how we got here. A bit about the proposed Marine Protected Area Bin 2 petition evaluation framework. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that framework because we got really into the weeds at the MRC and that's all in the binder, but happy to dig into that if you would like to. I'm really going to focus on the tribally focused petitions, as we call them, and then save some time for questions. Next slide, please. To orient ourselves, I'm not going to go all the way back to the beginning. We will start after the DMR was released. The commission received 20 petitions for regulatory change in 2023, proposing over 85 changes to the statewide network of marine protected areas. The petitions were referred to the department to evaluate and development recommendations for the commission. Last year, the commission acted on 5 of the more straightforward petitions. That's what we call the Bin 1 petitions at your December 2024 meeting. This leaves 15 petitions in Bin 2. These are the more complex petitions, and they include over 65 proposed actions that will need further evaluation. Next slide, please. So working closely with commission staff and staff from the Ocean Protection Council, we prepared a draft Bin 2 petition evaluation framework that was presented at the July MRC meeting. This framework was based on the petition framework approved by the commission in August 2023, and there's an annotated version of that in the binder that kind of cross-references the guidance in that framework to where those questions are in the petition evaluation framework. The adaptive management framework in the 2016 master plan for MPAs, and of course, the decadal management review. And I just realized we've got 3 different frameworks that we're working with now. We're gonna need to come up with a new word. The draft framework is intended to ensure the petitions are evaluated consistently with MPA statutory and management mandates, and provides a transparent way for us to evaluate our evaluations and recommendations. At the July MRC meeting a few weeks ago, the MRC requested the department make a few changes to the proposed framework that we presented. The first was to include the intent to consider climate change throughout all evaluations. So we've added some clarifying language up front to that proposed framework. There is a request to add equitable to question 14. So it reads, does the proposed change provide more equitable access opportunities for traditionally underserved or marginalized communities? And then to add 2 questions that consider the petitions in the context of the Commission's JEDI policy and coastal fishing community policy. The Commission is scheduled to receive the MRC's recommendation at its meeting this week on Thursday. And then once the department receives approval from the Commission on the BIN 2 evaluation framework, we will start evaluating petitions as best we can. And we'll talk about that a bit more. So what we'd really like to talk about with the tribal committee, next slide, please, is the first proposed grouping that the department put forward was to separate tribally focused petitions from the other petitions. And so we could bring these tribally focused petitions to you, work with the tribes, and really roll up our sleeves and get a better understanding of how we can work closely with the tribes to evaluate these petitions. I was thinking back to the MLPA initiative process and the evolution of that process from Central Coast to the North Central Coast to the South Coast to the North Coast, and where we learned so much, myself personally, I think as a department, as a state, as a resources agency, on what not to do with tribes. And I think we're really trying hard to learn what to do and how to be respectful and how to proactively engage in constructive dialogue. So we want to take those lessons learned, learn from the mistakes, build on the successes, and try to do better this time around with this petition evaluation framework. So we initially took a very broad brush approach. We did not want to presume what the tribal committee or the tribes would want to define as tribally focused petitions. So we created these 3 rather broad questions that are pasted there on the screen. And the goal of teasing out the tribally focused petitions was to potentially elevate and prioritize these petitions and to seek guidance from the tribal committee on some of the policy issues that are intertwined into those petitions, and how we want to evaluate those petitions in the context of the rest of the framework. Maybe I'll just read through these here because I think this is pretty important. So the first question is, was the petition submitted by a tribal representative, or have a tribal co-sponsor? Does the proposed change explicitly aim to advance tribal co-management, subsistence harvesting, stewardship, and or provide a tribal benefit through recognizing the cultural significance of an area? Or 3, is the proposed regulatory change explicitly linked to a tribe or tribes? Our proposed response, if you answer yes to any one of those questions, that would designate a petition as tribally focused. And so if we move to the next slide, we went out on a limb here, and we actually tried to apply this proposed framework to the petitions that we had, just to see how it would work. And we found that there were 4 petitions that met all 3 criteria pretty clearly. There was another petition that met the middle criteria. Does the proposed change explicitly aim to advance tribal co-management? It's a petition that was not submitted by a tribe or tribal community, but it explicitly referenced the cultural significance of the area that was encompassed in the petition. So we put that in there to hopefully spur some discussion. Let's go to next slide, please. So these are all of the remaining petitions. And so if we went forward with those five, you've got those five there on the left under group one, everything else into group two. And I think what's really important to focus on and questions that we have is all of these other petitions will also affect the ancestral waters of tribes across the state. Anything we do in the ocean, there is, I think most likely a tribe that has some ancestral relationship to that stretch of coastline. So even if it was a tribally focused petition, we're looking for some guidance on how do we want to interact with tribes across the state on all of these petitions that literally run from San Diego to the border with Oregon. So it is the entire length of the state that we're dealing with right now. Let's see here. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we're trying to stimulate for discussion today and get some guidance from the tribal committee and others as part of the discussion is what is the process to evaluate? One, the process to define tribally focused petitions. Do you agree with that framework? What is the process to evaluate them? The broader BIN2 petition evaluation framework, does that make sense? Both for tribally focused and the other petitions, the groupings, and then anything else we want to talk about and discuss as we get into this. Because again, we really want to start off with a solid foundation as we move into this evaluation process and do everything we can to set ourselves up for success. Next slide, please. So quick schematic of the milestones. So we are here at the August 12th Tribal Committee. Commission will be meeting on the 14th to potentially provide guidance to the department. After that, there is a lot of to be determines as to where do we go from here. There's talk of commission having a discussion in October to talk about when they will receive department recommendations. We could potentially bring something back early next year. But as we've been talking about all along, this is not MLPA 2.0. And so if we are to do something for the rest of these 15 petitions in the next 3 to 4 months, it's going to be a pretty quick evaluation. And there's not going to be a lot of robust outreach and engagement because there just won't be possible to do that. So we're going to have to balance the level of effort with the timeline, with the resources that we have, and how do we make all of this happen. Next slide, please. So just a reminder, we are using the MPA story map as our one-stop shop. So all of the petitions are posted here, the timeline's posted here. We really want to drive everyone to this site, and that's where we are trying to get everything updated in real time as one source of information, so everyone's getting the same message from the same place at the same time. Next slide, please. And then I would be remiss if I did not remind ourselves that within the decadal management review, there were 28 recommendations. And we have spent almost the entirety of the past 2+ years on recommendation 4. And we are now starting to think about evaluating the remaining 15 petitions, but we have a framework, so we're making progress. And so we just need to think about all these other things that we identified that we want to do and how we're going to get those done while we're trying to do this as well. Next slide, please. I'm happy to have a discussion, entertain any questions, and look forward to getting your thoughts and wisdom on this.
Well, I really appreciate the presentation, Dr. Shimon, first of all.
Correct.
Very well thought out. The problem is it will be looked at as MLPA 2.0. Regardless of the amount of time that the department has. From my knowledge and my experience, every one of those petitions is going to have impacts on a tribe, regardless if they meet the criteria of tribally focused or not. So if we can go back to the slide that showed the criteria for the tribally focused.
Yeah, so
That would
that
be
is
really
slide 5. Slide 5.
And I really appreciate the comment that you made about, lessons learned. I think, if we want to be successful in this effort, we absolutely have to focus on the lessons learned from MLPA. We can't repeat the same because it won't end up well if we do. And I think the importance of each tribe's cultural resources and their lifeways, their cultural lifeways are embedded, could be embedded in these petitions. So that's the highest consideration for me as the tribal committee co-chair or chair, is to ensure that I am being extremely respectful to each tribe, whether they're federally recognized, whether they are a tribal community or a non-federally recognized tribe, whether they are a California Native American person, or if they're a tribal organization. There's a lot of different statuses of tribal organizations. So that respect and that knowledge and the understanding of oftentimes numerous tribes federally recognized and a combination of non-federally recognized in some situations, really believe that their ties to that ancestral territory are higher than the state's regulation. So for me, looking at grouping these petitions, I personally am going to have to go one by one, and I'm going to have to figure out which tribe or group of tribes and what status that tribe is, and have feedback from that tribe. It cannot be a person submitting petition and getting necessarily tribal support. It has to be at least tribally co-led in my mind, to where they may not have the capacity, but they may say, we are 100% behind this project. And we need this project because of X, Y, and Z. And those are the things that I would insist on as part of this process. And I'm sure that's not what you want to hear, or what the department has the capacity to do. But if we don't do it, we're going to encounter a brick wall that says you did not initiate consultation. So really what this does is it says we're going to evaluate it based on what we know without talking to the tribe. And we can't do that. We have to initiate government to government consultation, even if we do it as a group. And today's meeting is information rollout. This isn't consultation. But from this meeting, we can, acknowledge that we understand how important each of these petitions are and how it's going to impact our California tribes and tribal people. So I believe the tribal components questions, the first one needs to be a little more specific as to was this petition submitted by a federally recognized tribe, a non-federally recognized tribe, a tribal representative? That can mean a lot. It could be a tribal employee, or a tribal co-sponsor. So I think, the other questions are well done. I don't have any edits to them, but I think it's really important to be clear as to who submitted the petition, if it was tribally submitted, because you may have tribes that don't agree with each other. You may have a tribe that's federally recognized and a non-federally recognized cultural tribe.
Well, that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask you about. So thank you for your comments. And this is exactly what we wanted to hear, because we had the same concerns of how are we going to do the level of outreach and engagement that's required to have meaningful discussion about the potential impacts of these petitions to tribes and tribal communities across the entire state, where there may be overlapping ancestral territories that we don't know about.
Right,
We're not the experts.
right.
And so looking to you and the tribes to help us navigate, how do we do this, both for the tribally focused petitions and then all of the other petitions as well, because they will have impacts to ancestral waters.
If I were leading this effort, I would recommend sending out the request for government to government consultation on a statewide basis regarding these 20 petitions or however many there are. And then I would do specific outreach to the ones you feel are tribally focused. And so the invitation to engage in that government to government consultation has to be given for all the petitions, because otherwise you're not going to have the information emerge. I know numerous tribes are working on ocean co-management. And it's something that I think natural resources and the department are kind of struggling with. What does that mean? I think that the co-management agreements that we're aware of are on land, related to animals, related to wildlife. And so this has a lot of implications. And I know my fellow commissioners may not share my patience for this process, but it is what we have to do, because it won't work if we don't.
So question on the tribally focused petition. So I think we captured the language that you had added. I'm kind of looking for some head nods. So as federally recognized tribe, non-federally recognized tribe, tribal representative, employee, and other
Tribal
Organization.
representative of what? We have to identify.
tribal representative.
Yeah.
Because I think,
I mean, someone could call me a tribal representative, but you wouldn't really know.
well, and again, that's our
Yeah.
challenge.
Right.
We're not vetting
Right.
people.
But the vetting is important for this process.
So how do we do that?
And well, by going back to the petition and submitting the request to that tribe
That tribe.
for the government to government consultation and ask those very specific questions.
Would it be beneficial to perhaps narrow the scope of these questions to only focus on that first question?
Mhm.
And so it's only tribally focused is only a petition that's submitted by a tribe? And
I-
doesn't reference,
I would feel a lot better if the petition was submitted by a tribe as a sponsor than trying to work backwards. And I mean, there could be exceptions. I'm not saying we couldn't do it the other way. I think it would be more complicated. If I know that a tribe in Southern California, whether federally recognized or not federally recognized, has submitted this petition, then I have a foundation to work from.
as do we.
And if it hasn't been submitted by federally recognized or non-federally recognized tribe. Perhaps it was a tribal cultural nonprofit. Maybe it was a consortium of tribes. And they are recognized and they are on the Native American Heritage List for consultation. Then, you know, that gives me a foundation. But I would have to, if none of those criteria existed, I would have to go back to the tribe in that area. Or
tribe.
the tribe, right? So I think that the key to beginning a efficient process has to be to change that first.
And maybe just focus on that first one.
Yeah. And then ask the other questions.
There you go.
Yeah. You don't want to not ask the other questions, but you want to establish very clearly that first question.
So in other words, that first question, if yes, then ask the other questions. So, then does it make sense to change it from being tribally focused to being tribally submitted? Or sponsored or co-sponsored?
Right.
Because we do
I
have
believe
one
so.
petition that a tribe is a co-sponsor.
I don't know if I have any tribal representatives on the line yet, that on the Zoom call that would like to weigh in. Those are my comments and from my experience over the last 23 years, that I would not feel comfortable without that kind of a foundational government to government discussion before moving forward. Any responses at all, or any hands up in the audience? Everybody's very quiet today.
It's the after lunch toll.
Okay, I hope that was helpful.
Yes, so for this phase, so would it be, are we looking at a potential recommendation from the tribal committee that will come out tomorrow that would amend the
Not
framework?
Thursday.
Tomorrow or Thursday, or Thursday?
It's Thursday.
Thursday, that will come out Thursday, this week? That would then amend the evaluation framework.
It wouldn't amend, it's a recommendation to the commission on amendment, and then it's up to the commission to
Right.
incorporate it, whatever those ways they see that.
So it sounds, Jackie, like your tribal committee recommendation would be to focus the inquiry on the first question. And for those for which that is yes, then to ask the subsequent questions.
Yes.
I believe that would reduce the number of petitions that have been thus identified as meeting that first question. It would bring it down to,
Or we can go to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
And I think we'd have to, I don't think, we just want to double check that top line is still checks with the revised language, but I assume it would be.
yes.
So it's the one, and I don't know. If you want to speak to, we have the petitioner, the other petition here, so
Yeah,
if we should.
You're a co-petitioner with a tribe and then you're a petitioner.
correct. Yeah. So for the Point South petition, we've been in conversations.
Make sure to
Sure.
speak up.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Sandy Ellsworth with NRDC. And for the Point South petition, we have been in conversations with 2 different tribes, but we do not have a co-sponsor.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would presumably move that one.
Do you
from this
understand
list.
what I'm saying and
Absolutely.
why?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm
for
not
sure.
trying to complicate things, but I think it'll make it more efficient down the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Right.
feels
Well, and I
best
think
is
it would
fine.
also might prevent some leakage into the tribally led petition group.
And I'm still not saying the other 15 or 16 or
So,
however
yeah.
many. There's still a very clear opportunity for a tribe to request consultation because this impacts this area of our gathering or, whatever it may be.
Right.
But I think, there can be a reasonable time period requesting responses that would still, enable this to move forward within a quarter period of time, possibly, something like that. But I think we've got to do a deeper dive for the tribal impacts, because that's not what happened in MLPA 1.0.
Right. So.
We do have a commenter, Jamie Blattle from the MPA Collaborative.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi there. My name's Jamie Blatter. I am the North Coast Specialist as well as the Tribal Liaison for the MPA Collaborative Network. And this might already be in the queue to be discussed later on in this discussion, but I was wondering if and how letters of support from tribes would fit into any of this.
I think it would fit into the larger group of petitions.
So from the department standpoint, based on guidance from the commission, we're trying to. We're gonna let the commission run the public process where the letters of the support, whether the letters of support can influence the policy decisions. Where we're going is we're gonna look at the science that we have for tribes, consultation, big C and or little c, for tribes that have an interest in a given petition. But in terms of letters of support, I think we would leave that to the commission side of the decision making and not have those directly influence the department's evaluation. We're trying to kind of keep, I don't want to say insulate ourselves because that's not the right word, but insulate ourselves from.
Well, I think if it is a priority to the tribe, is it too late for them to be a co-sponsor? If they said, if whatever group is bringing the petition forward and they just had 2 letters, and the tribe came forward and said, we're willing to co-sponsor this change, would that be a consideration, or is that too late?
That'd be a question for the commission.
Right. Is it?
These are your
It's
petitions.
not necessarily part of the department's evaluation if a tribe is a co-sponsor or or a sponsor of a petition. There's that's not a criteria for evaluation that the department's conducting. That's a question for the cultural and social aspects of the petition process. And as Craig's suggesting, that would be appropriate to be discussed then among the commissioners.
But this is criteria set up after the petitions were submitted,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so
Proposed criteria.
the tribe
Proposed
comes,
criteria, yes, proposed
Proposed
criteria, and the
criteria.
petitions were submitted a year and a half, 2 years ago.
2023.
Yeah,
December 20.
December 20.
And already a mistake.
so potentially a tribe could come back and say, I wasn't aware of these petitions being submitted. And I wasn't approached by the sponsor of the petition. But subsequently, they've worked with me, us, the tribe, and we are 100% behind this petition. That could be criteria that was considered by the commission.
By the commission, right, those are strong, and that's strong information for the commission to consider.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if it comes up in a consultation framework, it's something that we might consider as well as part of our evaluation, because we might get some
Because that-
information
That would bring it back.
in the consultation to help inform. And
Okay.
I think
Does that help, Jamie?
Yes, thank you.
Uh-huh.
because I think the other part of the discussion that we'll be seeking guidance on is how do we what do we do differently between the tribally focused petitions or the tribally led petitions and the other petitions? And I think the ones that are tribally sponsored, or whatever terminology we're going to use, That's, I think, I don't say easy one, but it's more direct and straightforward that we will proactively reach out to those tribes and
Right.
seek consultation and or discussions with them to
Right.
learn more about their petitions. The other ones that are non-tribally sponsored, that'll be harder. And
Right.
we will send out letters like we do, we can do blog posts, but my concern is that I know the tribes are stretched too thin, like
Right.
everyone. They get bombarded by letters from us all the time. And how do we elevate the importance of this so they know that that this is something that they may want to pay attention to?
Mhm.
And so any suggestions or guidance you have
What
on
works
that?
the very best are those little square newsletters with links that say, this is really urgent. You need to take a look at this because we're requesting consultation on these petitions to see if would affect.
Inviting.
So like an email
It's
newsletter,
a email newsletter.
email
Yeah.
newsletter?
Like your CDF,
Marine management
Marine
blog.
Region Management blog,
Yeah, we could probably do that
or the
pretty easily.
OTC,
Look-
the same
Look,
sort of thing.
look into the brain trust. We could do that, right?
I love those. They help me so much in my day to day. I wish more people would do them. Because it flags things where you may not be able to read the 3-page letter at a glance. You can read that at a glance and bookmark it and come back. to
And
it.
we can also have a wider distribution list for the
Yeah.
content. It's not a letter sitting on somebody's desk somewhere because they've
Right.
got 300 letters.
Refer back to that Dear Tribal Leader letter requesting consultation.
We still have to do the letter.
Well, of course,
but
yes.
we would make
And we
that
will
special
continue. We
effort.
do several letters.
Yeah,
But I want to make sure, especially because for the non-tribally sponsored petitions, understanding whose ancestral waters they are, because I don't think we have that information. Both from tribes that were historically located there or tribes that may have historically traveled to that area
Right.
to use
Or
those
traded.
resources. Right, and that's where we really, and we learned about that and from the North Coast process. And don't want to make those mistakes again.
our esteemed colleague, AWOC, Russ Crabtree. Every single MLPA meeting, he would stand up and make the statement on behalf of the Tolwa Dene. I'm not sure if they changed their name yet, or Smith River Rancheria. We have never ceded
Yep.
any of our claim to ocean waters. And that's up and down the coast. That's home, that's their home, their lifeway. So I think the respect that I see being shown to tribes from the department and the commission is extremely valuable and extremely appreciated. So we have to do this in a respectful way.
Thank you, and we will keep trying and keep looking to you for advice and guidance and members of the tribal community and elsewhere to help us along the path.
Thank you. I hope it's well received.
Me too.
Susan.
Great. It sounds, if this piece, do you feel like it's brought to a stage where you want to move to the second part about how petitions and the proposed changes are bundled together for later discussion by the commission and by the public? And okay, then that's great. And that includes consideration of elevating tribally led petitions. And so Caroline is schooled up to give an orientation to that with a presentation. It's not in the binder or online, but we will be posting it. So
Okay.
it'll be available to.
And where will it be posted and when?
It will be posted. We can have it posted
Meetings
in-
page,
immediately.
the commission meetings page, where it's the same place where
Okay.
people find the agenda
Okay.
and the meeting
And this
materials.
is the presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just a few slides.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll post that, so the folks have access to it.
Okay. Are you gonna share it now?
Yeah.
So before we get into this, I just want to make sure I'm like crystal clear on what is potentially going to happen on Thursday at the commission and then what the expectations of the department are. I think we're at the We're gonna clarify the tribally sponsored petitions language. I think where I'm still a little bit, and then the outreach we've talked about. But then the evaluation framework, how are we gonna? What will we do different between tribally sponsored petitions and the other petitions in terms of the entire framework? Our proposal was to engage in offer the consultation for the tribally sponsored petitions and then still run them through the framework as we would the other petitions. Does that resonate with you? And then,
Well, I think you would have that conversation with that tribe.
Okay.
This is the process that we are taking all petitions through, but we want to understand from you, the tribe's going to express what they want to accomplish as part of consultation. And it, without looking at those petitions, if there's clear expression of take or no take or whatever the change is, then the tribe expresses that clearly and is asking for specific things. And the department understands what the tribe is asking for and to see if it's possible to meet those requests and those expectations. But you still have criteria that you have to look at beyond that. So it's within that G to G, I believe, that you would find that pathway forward for just the ones submitted
try this sponsor.
by tribes or whatever classification.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Sarah, I see you nodding. I'd love to hear from you. What?
No, I think it's very helpful, you know, because we definitely saw the importance of pulling out those tribally sponsored
Uh-huh.
or whatever we're gonna call it, but knowing those other ones will have impact, so just, I think this conversation is great at the time that we're in. But also understanding, yeah, how do we do that, knowing they're at capacity?
Right.
You know, it's important, like, I think all the things we do are important, but how do we,
Yeah.
there's not enough time, so I think it is definitely helpful. I'm just trying to have those conversations with the department.
Right, and making sure that, you know, in the Dear Tribal Leader letter, I had this conversation with someone yesterday. That may sit on the chairman's desk
Yeah.
or on his executive assistant's desk for several weeks and not get to the Marine director.
Right.
Or it might go to the TIPO and not the Marine director and the CEO. I mean, you know, there's a lot of room for slipping through the cracks. So those email newsletters are just a perfect way to get it out to numerous people. And I know there is the commission has a list of tribal representatives in whatever title they may be who participated in commission meetings. So I think using that list together with the Native American Heritage List would be really comprehensive.
Yeah, and we do have a statewide list too, that's based on the NHC, but
Mhm.
we've added, like, I've added. If there's a marine department or natural
Yeah.
resources, we've added those in, so they get our letters and our emails.
That's crucial.
You know, cause we
Yeah.
do know it can funnel, I mean, there are some tribes that are very specific, it needs to go to me only, and we'll do that.
Yeah.
But until we hear it, if there's an environmental director, EPA or a marine, we're adding them on our department list.
Mhm.
Just to make sure we're blanketing it, just so it doesn't fall.
Yeah,
apart.
and then it's up to the tribe, you know.
Yeah.
Every tribe has their urgent matters and they have to drop everything and do things, and that consultation may slip by and you miss the deadline.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to do the outreach. It's important to have a process that is very inclusive and allows tribes a certain amount of time to call. Any thoughts, Chris, on your part?
Going back to the question one, and the part about tribal representative. I think what you were, I guess I'll ask instead of think, were you trying to capture, is this a person representing the tribe? Because I think a tribal person can be a tribal representative. But I think for the purpose of what Jackie is trying to narrow down, and what I think the question was trying to narrow down is identifying clearly that it's a person acting on behalf of the tribe as representative of the tribe.
Yeah.
So pinning that down is really important, as opposed, I've been to enough of the meetings to recognize when folks carefully navigate that space as though they seem to be representing, but if you ask them point blank, are you here on behalf of either the council or the chairperson, is a little more important.
Do you have authority to speak for the tribe?
Right.
No, that's great. Do I have any other comments, from anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to speak on this item before we start to wrap up? Seeing anything further, Dr. Schumann?
Craig is good. No, I think we'll just look forward to the discussion with the full commission on Thursday, and we're just seeking as clear a guidance as we can get on the tribal piece and the overall framework. So when we get sent off to do our work, we're meeting expectations as best we can.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Caroline?
Yes, okay. So, hi Commissioner, hi everyone in the room and online. I'm Caroline Newell. I'm the Sea Grant Fellow with the Fish and Game Commission this year. I'm gonna give a brief version of a presentation I gave at the Marine Resources Committee, which kind of runs through the staff recommendation for how we're going to be organizing the petitions when talking about our evaluations and our public discussions of the petitions. And so with over 70 individual proposed actions within the bin 2 petitions, the commission requested that the department staff work together to develop and propose alternative approaches to these groupings of petitions and or the actions within them. And that might span 2 or more days at an MRC meeting, or we might have a committee style convening of the commission. And so we want to build upon the department's draft recommendation to share like how we might detailedly go through these options. And I want to preface this by saying that I'm going to be using the department's previously suggested tribal focus definition. So
That's fine.
obviously that'll change based on today's discussion, but just as an example. And I'm really going to be focused in on the piece about how we're going to elevate the tribal focus petitions. Just to orient you, what we use to think about the grouping considerations of how we're going to be organizing this. We had a few things in mind. So obviously the tribal focus grouping, as the department talked about previously, as we just discussed. We also think it's important to consider the MPA network and the bioregion approach. So we're rooting this in our thoughts of discussing these evaluations of the framework in the MPA network, proposing to group by bioregion instead of like petition number. And this contextual approach is consistent with the 2018 MPA Monitoring Action Plan and the Marine Life Protection Act planning requirements. In total, we have 34 MPAs in consideration, with 6 MPAs that have multiple petitions proposing changes. And not just like that, we have petitions that are like adjacent to one another, even if they're not the same MPA. And so to ensure that we are considering those things in our evaluations, we think it's important to go north to south by region, MPA by MPA, and talk through the proposed changes. We also are conscientious of the public participation, public engagement. We want to ensure we are prioritizing public participation. Grouping by bioregion helps us facilitate that by organizing feedback around regional locations, limiting the amount of days needed to participate for those concerned about petitioned actions in their geographic area. There's some discussion at MRC about potentially hosting meetings in the bioregions that we're talking about, the petitions, to further allow for that, but that's dependent on funding. We also discussed or thought about action types. So the bin 1 petitions were discussed by action type.
But so we could do that kind of approach again here, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. So overall, the staff goal was to, for the petition groupings, to discuss MPA by MPA in each bioregion, north to south. So we would be taking all the MPAs under consideration, organizing them north to south within bioregion, splitting the petitions into petitioned actions for each MPA. And then the tribally focused petitions would be built into the bioregions, or we would discuss all the tribally focused petitions separately. And that is what we're really looking for feedback on today, is which option of those do we like, or is there another way that we want to think about this? And so diving in a little bit into what the bioregions are, there's 3 that are defined based upon the updated science and MPA monitoring action plans. We have the northern bioregion, which is California-Oregon border to the San Francisco Bay, the central bioregion, which is San Francisco Bay to Point Conception, and the southern bioregion, which is Point Conception to the US-Mexico border. Using the evaluation framework tribally focused definition, I've broken down the number of petitioned actions, number of petitions, and what those tribally focused petitions would be for those 3 bioregions. So in the north, we have 10 petitioned actions from 4 petitions, one of those being a tribally focused petition. In the central bioregion, we have 39 actions, 7 petitions, and 3 of those are tribally focused. In the southern bioregion, we have 23 actions, petitioned actions from 8 petitions, one of those being a tribally focused petition.
And based on that input, then it would change, that 3 would change to 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that would decrease the central to only 2 tribally focused petitions. And so to kind of illustrate for you what it would look like with our first option of we would take the tribally focused petitions and start each bioregion with the tribally focused petition. For the northern bioregion, that would happen naturally anyways, because Pyramid Point is all the way at the Oregon border. But even for the central and southern bioregion, we would be elevating those to the beginning of the discussion, regardless of the order geographically. And so you can see here, I have the affected MPA here, and then the petition number that it refers to. So you can see I split up the petition numbers, but for the locations north to south. And we have here the types of actions. So the newer expanded MPAs are designated with a diamond, which is the Duxbury Reef SMCA, and all other actions with a square. And this is just for the northern bioregion. And that's our tribally focused petition. The other option is to separate out the tribally focused petitions for their own discussion. And then we would refer back to them when later discussing the other petitions within bioregion. So we have here the 5 listed that we talked about before with the affected MPA, the bioregion, and you can see that we have them organized within the bioregion north to south, and within that we have the newer expanded MPAs would be talked about first and all other actions after that. And that's kind of, yeah, giving you an idea of what that would look like. That's all I have to share, and I'll leave it on this summary slide just for reference of what the 2 options are, but that's what we're looking for impact feedback on today.
Yes, Susan.
Thank you.
I'm in deep thought.
I know you are, so just additional, as we've been thinking through this as well, I just wanted to offer initially collectively with the department, OPC, we thought, tribally led petitions, we initially thought it might be best to hold those separately. And then started realizing there are other petitions that propose actions that would be in
That's what I'm concerned about.
contrast. So housing it within the bioregion might provide that, but elevating it to be the priority first conversations, and then bringing in other petitions that might also affect that bioregion for that contextual conversation, that's, I think, where we're landing as an option that might accommodate, recognize that those are both things at play, but still honoring tribally.
And I think it's gonna depend on if the tribe requests government to government consultation or not. That's another factor that could move it into a waiting area for meeting with the tribe, where you've taken it as far as you can, but there's a government to government consultation to clarify and to really hear from the tribe. I think you are separating them out and elevating them at the same time, but at the same time considering them. With all the other petitions, it's almost like you have to do it all.
Okay.
I don't think there's an either or here. I think it's comprehensive in how you look at it.
Interesting you say that, because that's actually one of the things as we were going through this process, we were realizing that depending on the outcome of the evaluations, there are instances where it does make sense, where you start here at this geography with this MPA because you have a certain number of actions all focused on that MPA. But then in other instances, it might be that there's a group of MPAs that really need to be taken into consideration together, or perhaps there are, a particular kind of activity that's being proposed for a number of MPAs around the state, and perhaps that activity itself needs to be the focus of a conversation. And so we were realizing that perhaps that while this might be the foundation, this is where we start. Once the evaluations are completed, we realize there may be the need to create some sort of a hybrid approach to some of these.
I think so. I think so.
So do we wait until, like, do we need to define the groupings now? I know people want to know when they can talk about their petition, but there's so many different scenarios, like, so for the tribally sponsored petitions, I gotta get the naming right now. There may be some policy decisions that carry over from north to south.
Right.
And we might, you might miss that if you go back, if you don't start in the right direction. So having those all together.
You don't even know where to start. You don't know which end to start on.
Right.
Until you start having the discussions. And it's gotta be happening simultaneously.
Right.
With looking at everything as a whole. It's,
It's like you gotta talk about all of the tribal pieces in one setting,
mhm.
and then the other pieces in another setting, and I'm
And see what overlaps. If you're prioritizing, and I know you are I'm recommending that. But you do the initial deep dive into those tribally sponsored petitions. And you learn a certain amount of information about how, what the tribes feel, and if they're working with someone, what the goal is of that other organization or that other network group. And you have that knowledge, and then you go down to other petitions within that same geographical area, and you learn more. It could change what happens in the decision-making here. So you're not really making any final decisions. You're gathering, you're doing your due diligence, investigating, gathering knowledge and science and information and ecological traditional knowledge. It's just a big knowledge gathering effort.
and I'll overshare. I'm concerned about how we're gonna do this. I've been concerned. You guys have been hearing me saying it for 2 years now. But to do this right, we need MLPA 5.0.
Yeah.
And
I think-
we're
I
at
think-
MLPA 0.1.
I think we can do it if. I think you can do it with my help.
I'll take you up on that. Done. We have a deal.
It's recorded.
We have a record.
I really think that tribes are going to, the other aspect besides how it impacts the tribes. How is it going to impact the fishermen
Well, and the community as well.
in the community? How is it going to impact other efforts, climate change, as you mentioned, you know, the Jedi, the fishing communities? I think all of that criteria has to be considered. But I think me diving into those tribally sponsored first and then looking at the geospatial impacts in the larger grouping of petitions, I think that will be helpful. And we can do outreach to those tribal governments and tribal groups. And so they know that we have done our best to get their input. And
we-
once we've done that, I feel like we've
Okay.
done what we're supposed to do.
Great, because we've done joint consultations before with the department and the commission.
Yeah.
So that may be a good way to approach some of these.
Yeah.
So you've got firsthand, I don't know, commissioners can join in consultations, right? Yeah. So,
They
all right, let's do
generally
it.
They generally choose not to, but
Yeah, I usually ask them for joint.
What was that?
Hey, Jackson, join.
I have the commissioners join consultations, and generally, just timing wise, they all have full-time jobs, and they're almost always during the week, during the day, so they generally don't coincide.
But if you get it on my
with-
calendar, I'll be there.
Excellent. And to the question about, needing to make a decision today, or even a recommendation today about these options. Even if the recommendation were made today to go a certain pathway and the commission said, sure. There really wouldn't be a lot we could do with that information until we get further down the road.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Because we're not ready to begin sitting down and having those conversations without the evaluation happening.
Well, and that's where we're gonna be in a tough spot because we're gonna have to, eventually, we'll be first out of the gate with a recommendation. At some point, so we'll be doing the evaluation, but at some point that leads to a recommendation. Which will
They
be,
don't necessarily have to come out at the same time.
no, we can fill out the eval, but we'll have to think about how we do that, because that's part of the. Well, we'll navigate that. We're gonna be doing some all-day brainstorming tomorrow. To start thinking about
You're
how do we
gonna
actually
learn-
do this.
You're gonna learn so much from all 20 of the petitions.
There's only 15.
I'm gonna learn
We already
so
did 5, there's only 15 left.
Okay, so there's 5 that fall within the 15?
5 were the bin
Four.
one.
Or no.
No,
Oh.
there's 4 now,
Oh,
and
4,
those 4 fall within the 15.
Okay, so
4 of the
15 total.
15.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by the time we go through each petition and get intimately knowledgeable about that petition and who all it affects, it's not gonna be, it won't be hard to make that decision. Without that information, it's impossible to make that decision.
You make it sound easy, I like it.
I simplify things
I
every
like
day of
it.
my life.
Done.
I find solutions.
So how do you want to move forward with any kind of recommendation with regard to evaluation, or do you want to hold that off until December?
In regard to
I think the options
organizing.
have to change to the hybrid approach. The organization, I think we have to look at all of the petitions elevating the tribally sponsored petitions. But considering all of the petitions and the impacts.
So are you suggesting it's a combination of elevating the tribally led petitions or co-led petitions and then looking at them within the context of the bioregion? How all of those that are happening in their region, in their area.
I can't answer the question on the tribally sponsored petitions if I'm not aware of what other petitions might affect those. It may be very clear to you all because you've studied them backwards and forwards. But it's not clear to me.
Right.
So I could be wrong and
No, we've looked at them and we also are like, this could go multiple ways.
I think that hybrid approach is super important. I think together with that, the grouping where the tribes are elevated is through that G to G and that special outreach. And they're gonna have priority meetings with us. Great.
You hope.
Does that help or hurt?
I think it helps. Helped a lot.
Okay,
I think we still have a lot to unpack, but this is a good start.
good.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead and,
On the red abalone.
did we get through all the exhibits?
Sure did.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, yes, so the detailed draft evaluation framework with these pieces that he touched on, that is going to also be considered by the commission on Thursday.
Okay,
It shows up under the Marine Resources Committee item because it is an MRC
Okay.
recommendation.
okay. Thank you. Let-
So, red abalone, I'm again going to suggest we hand it over to Susan to talk
Okay.
a little bit about the context for this conversation and where the commission is. And the department.
Sounds great.
Great, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So the focus as for years and years, the tribal committee and tribal participants have expressed their strong concern for and the deep significance of red abalone. The focus of the discussion today is about the department's efforts to prepare for restoration and developing. The department has been in the process of exploring developing a restoration plan at the statewide level. The commission supported that approach. So that encompasses, that loops in the area that was formerly the recreational fishery, red abalone fishery, that has now been closed for eight going on 9 years. And then it also loops in south of San Francisco to the areas that formerly had either recreational or commercial fisheries quite a long time ago at this stage. The department gave a presentation on its efforts at the Marine Resources Committee meeting in July. And so Craig Schumann is going to provide similar information to you for discussion today and get you oriented to where they're at and where they envision going.
That's good.
All right, I'm back.
A presentation.
Another presentation. And just big thanks to staff for the last presentation and this presentation. I take no credit if it goes well and all responsibility if it goes wrong. Next slide, please. So brief overview, just a bit of background on how we got to where we are, the different elements of the restoration plan, a bit of focus into what we're calling essential restoration information, brief discussion about partnerships, and then where do we go from here? Next slide, please. So in terms of background, I'm just going to start in December 2022 when in discussions with the commission, we decided to shift efforts away from the fishery management plan, unfortunately, to a restoration plan. We continue to see loss of kelp on the North Coast. We are not seeing recovery of abalone as we had hoped. So it just didn't make sense to continue focusing on efforts to support a fishery. We're turning to restoration instead of fishing. There was tribal outreach in July of 2023 about the restoration plan, and again in January of 2024 with notification of the restoration plan process update. And we have met with several tribes over the course of the past several years. about this. At the July 2024 MRC meeting, we provided an update on the development of the Red Abalone Restoration Plan process. And at that meeting, we talked about the development of the restoration plan. We had completed tribal consultations with representatives who had requested them. We talked about developing a community working group and a technical advisory committee with tribal participation welcomed in both venues, either through direct participation or through separate consultation. And we also explained that we were exploring the feasibility of professional facilitation and funding to support that facilitation. And so this is something that unfortunately was not in the room for at the MRC meeting, but staff were prepared to do the facilitation in-house. And I actually said, no, we need to do outside expert neutral facilitation, seeing how helpful that was in the MLPA process, in the SQUID FMP update process that we just went through. And so when we were unable to find funding, this process stalled. And so that is my responsibility for putting the brakes on it and not finding the funding. And so I just want to make that clear, and I'll make that clear at the commission next week. So I think there was some confusion at the MRC. Unfortunately, we were not able to find funding. So in January 25, between the lack of funding for facilitation and the state budget cuts, where we lost 3 staff in our invertebrate program, we were unable to continue this effort. So we officially hit pause and are now picking up the pieces to try to move forward. Next slide, please. So this is a cartoon just showing general restoration plan elements. This is not specific to red abalone, but essentially you've got essential restoration information, basic information about the species, its historical range, where it is now, what its status is, its trajectory of the population. We've got restoration goals and objectives, your restoration strategy, restoration actions, and the implementation schedule. Next slide, please. The place where we're focusing now, where we want to start, is this essential restoration information. It's been many years since we closed the fishery. Because of the lack of funding that was coming in, we have not been able to maintain surveys at the same rigor that we had before. So we need to figure out how we're going to get information about the status of the species throughout its entire range, not just on the North Coast, to help inform this process. Next slide, please. So to do that, we're going to look at what existing data sources are available, both traditional, tribal, non-traditional, whatever there may be. We want to uncover every stone to figure out what information is out there and what we can learn about the historical presence of abalone in California, current and trajectories that we're seeing. Use that to do a gap analysis to identify information gaps, and then identify approaches to data collection. Partnerships are going to be a key part of this. We've got a lot of folks that are interested in helping us with this, and we want to take them up on that offer. So, next slide, please. And so we're using the term partner in a very, very broad context. So this is a big tent, a big umbrella. Everybody fits under the term partner. And so we will be working broadly with anyone and everyone moving forward. Next slide, please. These are the different steps that we anticipate and kind of more specific touch points where partners and tribes and others can engage, and whether it's near term or long term, and thinking, who has got a greater role in different parts of this. Again, we're just the very early stages just to try to get the ball rolling while we're seeking funding and resources. Next slide, please. So this will leave us with the data inventory, identify the suite of partners that will fit under that tent, that want to come into the tent with us, formats and process for engagement, explore funding opportunities, but ultimately we want to figure out what data do we need, how are we going to get it, get folks out there collecting the data, and then bring it all in and talk about how do we use that to develop a restoration strategy. And I think that's it.
Can we
Next.
go back to the partnerships again?
Yes, can we
Or
go
do you want
back?
me to wait till the end?
No, that was the last one. That was perfect time.
Okay,
So let's go this one or the one more back.
one more.
One more back.
what are we gonna be asking, how are we going to be asking our partners to participate? Do we know that yet?
At the first stage, it's gonna be what data sources are you aware of?
Sharing data.
Sharing data and information to the extent data and information can be shared. We'll then bring folks that are interested together to talk about, well, what data do we think we need? And then who has the resources and capacity to go out and gather the data to fill those data gaps? So for example, there are a lot of, let's call them displaced recreational abalone divers that really want to get in the water and do something, right? They are used to out there hunting. And when you're hunting, you're doing something. So they want to continue hunting, but maybe it's not hunt to catch, it's hunt to count.
Right. So that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, thanks for putting a finer point on that. And to the extent that tribes are willing to share traditional ecological knowledge with us that we can use to help inform what, maybe it's what restoration targets should be, or how to better inform data gathering.
I'm just seeing an opportunity for co-management here. In this partnership.
Yeah.
But I don't wanna go down a rabbit trail. Go ahead.
No, that, I think all trails welcome.
Because I think together we're stronger and I think together we're better.
I 100% agree. And so if we go to the next slide. This is where we're, you know, we can't do this alone. And as we go through the process, our role gets progressively smaller, the smaller shield. And the partner's role gets progressively larger. As we need to rely on partners because we can't do this alone and we are stronger together.
Okay.
So that's all we had for that.
So the funding piece. That's always the challenge. How much money do we need?
I'd have to go back and confer with staff to see what, I think we had a range of budgets.
Mhm.
So, you know, with anything, you can have the Cadillac or you can have the lower end model. We generally like to have something on the mid lower end. It's usually our sweet spot.
What the
But-
state can afford.
Or the funders or donations or bake sale or, but I think just given the history of abalone in California, I won't mince words, there's a lot of distrust of the department when it comes to abalone management. And that's where I feel that independent neutral facilitation is just critical to help us get through this process, because ultimately we want to get back to a fishery. You know, my 14-year-old, I'm gonna overshare, my 14-year-old was complaining the other day, so he came to the MRC meeting. And he was complaining that I closed abalone before he was old enough to dive. And now we're at your Thursday meeting, going to be proposing to keep it closed for 10 more years. And he is not happy and it breaks my heart.
Yeah. Well, I think there's different perspectives that are important to share. I think, you know, we're seeing recovery where we're at.
And that's great. And that's what we need to,
So why are we seeing recovery?
Right.
You know, what areas are seeing recovery? And what does that recovery look like? And what does that mean? And what are we doing differently than other areas are doing?
and that is something that we are hearing anecdotally and seeing through our research, is that there are pockets
Mhm.
along the California coast that are doing okay.
Mhm.
And that was part of the discussion at the MRC, is there was a lot of discussion of, well, how come we can't harvest in these pockets now? And we're like, well, maybe, but let's try to understand why these areas are doing okay. How do we get the broader coast to do okay? And then start thinking about what does returning to a viable fishery look like? or traditional harvest and gathering.
I think that, you know, there's a lot of fear of over harvest if we say it's doing really well here
Yeah,
and we make that public.
Yeah.
You know? So,
well, and poaching is certainly a concern, you know, enforcement does their best with the
Yeah.
tools and resources that they have.
right.
And. yeah,
No, I think the partnerships are excellent, but I also think, you know, as per an earlier conversation, co-management in the ocean really hasn't been defined.
Right,
So that's on this list, it has to factor in.
right. How do we take a area of ocean that many different people are
Right,
using at the same time?
right. Well, just, you know, my day-to-day work is Trinidad Harbor. So we're doing a whole lot at Trinidad Harbor. And we're trying to ensure that, you know, pollution is to zero if we can. We're trying to find ways to be more efficient with managing plastics and trash. We're doing surveys in the area of special biological significance. We're doing counts.
Yeah.
And we're trying to educate people in that little area. And also, you know, doing some specific technical scientific studies with Cal Poly and some other partners. So that information is going to be so valuable.
Right.
But it's not necessarily going to be public information. So I think under co-management, it could be shared. So that's the difference for the tribes.
Right.
Just something else to think about.
No, and I think that's, and then how do we replicate that
Mm.
along the coast? Cause I'm just getting some numbers in here that are, the facilitation costs anticipated were about 300,000 as proposed. And our old abalone surveys used to cost about $100,000 for the rapid assessments, because you're putting a lot of people in the water on boats over a number of days, over a number of different locations. So
Well,
it's not.
I know there's funding available from some philanthropic groups.
Right.
I think that would be a really good place to go after funding.
We tried, and I will try again, and I think if we can build a stronger coalition identifying the need, we might be able to get some traction, because we're not talking on the grand scheme of things. You know, it's a lot of money, but it's not impossible money.
Yeah. So I think it's an excellent idea, and I'm happy to see the discussion about when can we open it?
That's my
What is possible?
hopefully before I retire. That's my goal.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Craig. Any comments? Any other staff that want to comment?
Still get calls from Stalking, saying when is Avalon going to open?
He had his chance.
Where is Sonky?
Probably
It's probably
Bragg
listening.
right now.
Yeah, he's probably
Yeah. He still participates in the dive work up on the north coast. Urchin removals.
Yeah, he has to be part of this partner working group.
I think he might have applied to be on the working group. I'd have to
Was
check,
he
I'd have to check with Joanna.
I don't know about that.
He might have been. But we didn't, I think we, I we appointed seats or not, Joanna would know.
Mhm.
Oh, Sanki will be part of our dive work later this month. He's still a volunteer diver, so he'll be out there.
Sweet.
Okay, all right,
We got some institutional knowledge.
there you go. Okay. Final call for comments from our participants. Seeing none. I think we should move along to item 5, co-management roundtable. And our staff lead on this is Melissa.
Yeah, so this is, but so the exhibit, 5.1 that is associated with this agenda item is the co-management vision statement and definition, that were adopted, I believe, in 2018 or so, in that range. So we've had it for a while, and in fact, we're finding that other agencies and the legislature are beginning to use those, which is exciting. But this agenda item is an opportunity for our meeting participants to share co-management initiatives or projects that are either planned or underway, or perhaps have been undertaken in recent years, where they've collaborated perhaps with public agencies or maybe with other tribes, et cetera. And it's an opportunity for folks to learn from one another with regard to co-management, what that might look like, what has worked, what hasn't worked so well, how we could make it better. And so it's sort of an open, we don't have any presentations today specifically, so open floor for anyone who wants to share some of their co-management experience.
Thank you, Melissa. So do I have any tribal representatives or leaders or participants today that have any exciting information to share?
And again, if you want to speak to this issue, please use the raise hand button in Zoom to let the chair know that you're interested in contributing to the conversation.
I know there's a lot of exciting projects going on with the Karuk tribe and fire management and elk. I'm not aware of the specific projects that the Rock tribe has, but I know they're doing some really great things. And the Condor and various other venues. The tribe I work for, we're doing some great things, as I just mentioned, in the ocean, but nothing specific that I'm able to share today. I just really am excited about where we've come from, you know, working on this myself since being on the commission in 2012. I was confirmed in 2013. None of these things were happening in the last previous years before that. And then we approved the co-management vision and definition in 2020, I want to say. February or somewhere in the new year in 2020, if I remember correctly.
February of 2020.
February of 2020. So, no, here we are 5 years later, and I know Sarah and Craig could probably tell us, you know, there's approximately a dozen co-management agreements that are in process. I mean, I'm not asking you to, but you know, there's a group of them. And so it's really exciting. I just really appreciate, and I said every commission meeting, and I want to say it again, the department has come a very long ways in working with tribes. And as well as the commission. Thank you all.
Jack.
Jack. Oh, I'm sorry. Susan.
I'd be happy to add that, that as the co-management as it pertains to marine protected areas, that the Marine Protected Area statewide leadership team has, the new 5-year work plan for the next 5 years has reinforced the goal of that group to work on developing and understanding how to develop co-management to support marine protected area management, monitoring, science. And so that's a place where I think you'll continue to see development and the integration of traditional knowledge. And so that I think those are other aspects that could help support future conversations here.
Thank you, Susan. That's great to hear. Any other comments? Let's go ahead and move along to.
I think there might be a online.
Oh, yay. Hi, Andrew. Go ahead.
You should be able to unmute yourself, Andrew.
Yeah, we can't
We
hear
can't
you.
hear you.
We see you. We see that you're unmuted. Rats.
There is a volume, obviously the volume on your computer, but also a volume in Zoom. So if you select audio at the bottom of your screen, there's audio settings. And check those audio settings to make sure that both your microphone and your speaker are set to a high enough volume.
Looks like you might not have the bandwidth.
Yeah, not sure. So
Sometimes it works better if you turn your video off. Have more bandwidth.
he has no volume at all. So Andrew, if you're having, it looks like you're having technical issues with your audio. Feel free to send an email message to the FGC account, the one that you use for sending public comments. That's the FGC@fgc.ca.gov. And someone can contact you that way, or if you need to, you can also call 916-902-9286. Again, 916-902-9286, and a staff member can help you get yourself unmuted.
And if you'd like to put anything in the chat, we can follow up. No chat. Okay, sorry, disregard. But Andrew, if you do get muted or you're able to speak and share, we're happy to recognize you later in the agenda. Okay, let's go ahead and move to item 6, tribal subsistence definition, and we're gonna discuss the process for developing a tribal subsistence definition. I did have the opportunity to speak with several tribal representatives and try and find our pathway forward on this again. And really what we came up with is the tribes need to have an opportunity to caucus. And part of what we did in the early days in being able to find consensus on the co-management vision and definition happened during tribal committee meetings where the tribes would leave the room and caucus. So it's a widely accepted meeting process. And what these tribal representatives asked was to be able to have their own caucuses unofficially in the next month or two, and then to report back out at the tribal committee in December and to share the progress they've made. And I believe it's an excellent way to move forward. And I think, no, part of the issue is if you look up the definition for subsistence harvest, you can get a lot of different definitions, but it's not necessarily a tribally approved definition of subsistence. Subsistence is not really a tribal word. It's a non-native word that talks about living off the land. So I think there's a lot of passion behind finding what it really does mean when tribes are gathering and they're harvesting and they're trading and they're, for that tribe, what does that look like for them? And I think that's where we have to start, instead of saying, here's the word, now define it. So it's more about that process of how does your tribe fish or hunt or gather or pick willow for baskets. I mean, those are private, kind of very very confidential processes that people aren't comfortable in really sharing. But in effect, it's subsistence harvest. What non-native people identify is with subsistence harvest. So I'm very excited about this process, and I have asked Megan Rocha, who's the executive director for the Polikla tribe of Yurok people, to join us today. And I believe, Megan, you were able to join recently.
She's on.
Yes, hi there.
Hi, Megan, welcome. Thank you for, I know you're otherwise occupied with meetings today, but thank you so much for taking the time. And I'd really love you to share what you and other tribal representatives kind of talked about in brainstorming.
Yeah, thank you. It's probably already been said, but just to reiterate, obviously this has been something that tribes have been advocating for quite some time, a desire to sort of develop a definition. And as you know, the commissioner mentioned, subsistence may not be the right word that the tribes end up landing on, but needing to come up with a term and definition that really encompasses the unique uses by tribal citizens in the state. So there is definitely a desire to continue to do this work. And I think having a process that tribes can participate in outside of this space will be really important, but then to make sure that there are good touch points and inclusion where that work can be brought back through the tribal committee to make sure that there is sort of a transparent process also. And obviously this needs to be done in partnership with the state because obviously the commission is who it will ultimately be brought to for consideration. So so I think that hopefully we can get a good, strong path moving forward and use a similar process as was used to develop the co-management vision and definition that many of you all worked on for quite some time. So.
Thank you very much, Megan. While I have you, we're also earlier in the agenda, we're talking about the annual tribal planning meeting. And I was wondering, a lot of the work we did on the definition of co-management came out of a few of those annual tribal planning meetings. And we're tentatively thinking about the October Fish and Game Commission, trying to either include it within that October 8th or 9th agenda, or to maybe have it be the day before. Those dates may not work, and we may have to bump out till later in October. But the annual tribal planning meeting, I just wanted to mention, is also a really good forum for this discussion. If the tribes have had a chance to caucus and come up with some ideas that could be shared. And in either that October annual tribal planning meeting or the December tribal committee meeting. So just some food for thought there on forums and formats that we could use to discuss, how we move this forward. And I think as we talked about, we don't want this to take 7 years this time. We want to try and move it forward within a year if we can. So really appreciate your leadership, and Megan's going to help facilitate meetings. She's not going to be the head woman in charge, but she's gonna help facilitate. So I really appreciate that commitment.
Yeah, I'm happy to help as I can. Obviously, this is a big priority for the Polyclaw tribe of Yurok people. It aligns well with a lot of the council strategies in trying to work towards co-governance and co-management with the state. And so this is another piece of that puzzle. So really honored to be able to be a part of this, and we hope we have a lot of good tribal participation in this process. So thank you guys for letting me share a little bit, and all the good work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Megan. Again, we understand your time is constrained with guests there today, so.
Yeah, I apologize. We have BIA and Office of Self-Governance here, so I need to get back to.
Tell them all I said hello.
I will. All right, thanks.
Wish I was in Trinidad. I'd love to see them too. Thank you. So that's, kind of exciting to, find a pathway forward. We've been working on this already for several years and just haven't had the right catalyst to move forward. So I'm feeling good about this path, and I think so are several other people. And so I'm happy to make the recommendation tomorrow that this is how we move forward. Excellent. Any other comments from any of our other visitors? Andrew, are you able to speak now?
It says he's connecting to audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you for welcoming my participation, and it's really good to hear the discussion. I'm interested in the co-management and also the subsistence, and one of my main questions here is: are there invitations for tribal participation within the realm of the funding discussion? So Dr. Schumann was talking about red abalone and the funding, but of course my area of interest is really more about seaweed. And so, like with the, I see opportunities for tribal involvement in the area of the kelp. There's just been $250,000 awarded for surveying commercial kelp, basically assessing the impact of commercial bull kelp harvest. And as one of the only bull kelp harvesters in the state, I know what I do. And so I'm not sure that it would cost $250,000 to, assess the impact of my harvest. It's certainly far in excess in what I make. And so what I'm wondering is, um, is the department, the people that are organizing this, and maybe Dr. Schumann has some inside information, are you considering doing outreach to to tribes in the area, say in the Mendocino County area, to find out if people want to be involved in receiving funding to start to monitor the commercial harvest that they're very interested in, at least according to the ISWC statements from the past few years, that really called for an investigation of commercial harvesters. And I totally welcome that. I think it's very reasonable. And not only do I see opportunity for participation in that, but I think that it's of the utmost importance that that participation happen within the context of a tribal harvest that's not improperly sort of quote, managed under. Some interesting words there when you talk about words subsistence and managed under, things like that. But not managed under recreational or recreation of a tribal relationship with the ocean, but actually a true tribal harvest. So that's what I think there's an opportunity for here, that there's $250,000 on the table, and that tribal participation could be involved in doing the work that needs to be done. I'm willing to share what I know, like my experience as a commercial harvester, and that if there's any tribal participants, particularly the youth, within the youth, that they be paid and that they be able to participate in the studying under a tribal harvest that's not limited by any type of arbitrary wet pounds per day, especially for a resource that doesn't have any quota on any given day anywhere in the state. We're not talking about, anything, deer tags or something. There's no limit on the amount of seaweed that can be harvested. So that's my question. That's the seed, obviously, I'm wanting to plant. Funding for tribal participation that gets paid to tribal participants that are able to conduct the research needed under a sovereign tribal harvest.
Thank you, Andrew. Are you working with a specific tribe right now on co-management or any of the harvest for gold kelp, or could you share a little bit more information about your current work?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked it, because when I bring up this topic in the commission meetings, I get a lot of pushback. They're like, I'm not supposed to talk about it. And also going back a few years, seaweed harvesters in general were challenged about, like, well, did you ask tribal people, basically about harvesting seaweed, And as Dr. Schumann noted, outreach is challenging. And we also pay our licenses to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And if there's anyone else I'm supposed to talk to, I'd really like Fish and Wildlife to take the initiative to tell me, and I'd be happy to investigate that. Now, on my own, I've talked to people on the Mendocino coast. It's a small sampling of people. And then, of course, like I said, there's the ISWC statements. There's probably at least 3 of them describing tribal affiliations and also with regard to commercial harvesters. So I'm not currently working with any tribal representatives on this, but I have spoken to people that identify as tribal people from federally recognized tribes on the Mendocino coast that support this idea. And another question I had is regarding the tribal harvest, because I don't want to be stepping on any toes here. Is there any tribal support for restricting tribes' access to food by the state? Does anyone want that? I haven't found anybody. So that's kind of another question. But yeah, just with your question, I have spoken to people, and they are supportive. And I can't necessarily say, exactly which tribes people are affiliated with. And I would want to be, very certain about that before I'm not going to mention anybody's name here.
Right, no, that's fine. I was just curious because how you can be involved and how you can help is sharing information. So
Mhm.
sharing information to tribal representatives about this tribal committee and the work that the Fish and Game Commission is doing and the work that the Department of Fish and Wildlife is engaged in. Department of Fish and Wildlife is engaged with numerous tribes in co-management processes, efforts, through government to government consultation. There's a pathway for a tribe if they're interested in learning more about how the department is working with tribes on co-management efforts that exist for the tribe.
Mhm.
If you have citizen science that you would like to share, you have the ability to do that through the Marine Resources Committee and this committee. We've worked, as mentioned earlier, for the last 13 years on co-management, standing up a definition and a vision, and that's part of today's discussion is the Fish and Game Commission definition of co-management. And
Mhm.
so based on that, there's now legislation that has gone through the process and is in place for tribes to enter into co-management agreements with the state. So you sharing that information to people who are either from a federally recognized tribe or a tribal community or a tribal organization, if they have desires to do things or if they're concerned about harvesting of kelp or other things, this is the place to send them to.
Mhm.
We're working on a definition for subsistence harvest, and you just heard Megan from the Polyglot tribe, and we're going to there will be a space, a forum for tribal leaders to gather and discuss what that means to them. So this is the right time for tribal representatives to be involved, and just sharing your knowledge of what you've learned from this conversation today is very, very valuable. So I appreciate you being on. I appreciate the question.
I thank you for that. And I just want to note that, as has been said, outreach is difficult. And definitely my ears perked up when I heard you say about this certain type of email format to be able to actually, maybe have some type of expedited way to cut through whatever reasons people might not be alerted to certain things that are happening. And I did get that feedback that I don't know what's going on. And as Dr. Schumann noted, and with regard to the abalone, there's not a lot of trust, and for me as a tribal person, I'm not. If I were, I wouldn't trust this process, especially with what I know about harvesting seaweed, and to have this harvest limit on tribal people, whether people say it exists or doesn't. It depends on which documents you look at the Department of Fish and Wildlife. To me, if I was in the shoes of the department and trying to figure out how to get more engagement, I would go for the low-hanging fruit, because you could just decide we're going to, quote, manage tribal harvest under commercial harvest rather than recreational harvest, and we're not going to charge any fees, and we're not going to have any reporting. And the reason I would put it under commercial harvest rather than recreational harvest, if I had to choose, And if it was me, I wouldn't be in either of those places. But my understanding of tribe is that it refers to more than one person. Like, I feel like I can say that with utmost certainty. Tribe refers to more than one person. Recreational harvest is personal use. Okay, so right away, it's in the wrong spot, right? I have experience harvesting a lot of seaweed over many years for many people, so I understand what goes into this activity. And if it's going to be this thing where someone can't even harvest enough for themselves, much less their grandparents sitting back in Covelo or Redwood Valley, that's just not going to. How do you get engagement with something like that? Whereas if you just change where it's managed, and I have to say, this whole thing about is managed, then I say, well, who is managing it? Because there's no responsibility there, and unfortunately, what I discovered is it's Dr. Schumann's name at the bottom of all these things. So, I don't know. I want to take responsibility with Dr. Schumann for that, and that's what I'm doing. Okay, because that's my understanding of how to be in this world. But change that one thing and then see what kind of engagement you get with tribal people. They might be a little more receptive because what's happening.
Andrew, I
Yeah,
don't
go
mean
ahead.
to cut you off, but I do need to move along. And I just encourage you to follow the process and to learn and to understand what has been accomplished through the tribal committee, and know that we are all working here for the benefit of tribal governments, tribal organizations, tribal people. And it's a tough process, but as I mentioned, where you can help is to share the information. If you have connections with tribal people, and encourage them to join the next tribal committee meeting in October. And
That's a
that can
long
be
time
found
away.
on the Fish and Game Commission website. So thank
It's a
you so
long
much.
time
today.
away.
Thank you very much for your comments. I really appreciate your concern and your interest. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Okay, I'm going to call for last comment on tribal subsistence definition. Oh, Jessica, I see your hand up.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to kind of echo and go off of what Megan Roach has said before. Tribes really need the ability to caucus and reach consensus on matters of shared importance, and that definitely applies to the ongoing conversation on the definition of subsistence harvest. Our team at Trinidad Rancheria and Megan Rocha have begun scoping some potential approaches and considerations for the definition, and staff from both sides are going to continue the dialogue and refine ideas collaboratively. And ultimately, we hope to bring forward a clear, well-informed perspective that reflects tribal priorities and ensures that the definition of subsistence harvest meaningfully incorporates tribal rights, cultural practices, and management approaches. So I wanted to thank you for your time, and we look forward to continuing this important work.
Thank you very much for sharing, Jessica. We really appreciate it. Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, let's go ahead and move to item number 7. Commission Tribal Consultation Policy, and I'm going to turn it over to Melissa.
Thank you, Commissioner Carmison. So the tribal consultation policy that the commission adopted is now approximately 10 years old. It's a little bit outdated, and we've known that for some time. Commission has indicated a desire to update that policy. One of the things that's challenging is that the Natural Resources Agency has around 30 or 35 entities that are part of the quote Natural Resources Agency family. And many of our organizations adopted tribal consultation policies around the same time in the 2012-2014 time period. So we all recognize that we all have policies that need to be updated, and the challenge is that the California's tribes and tribal communities are already overwhelmed with requests from state agencies. Can you provide us with input on this? How do you think we should do that? Or can we work together on this particular issue? And so collectively, we thought it was best if the Natural Resources Agency could focus first on its policy, getting that updated. And then the quote, natural resources family entities could use that as the foundation for our policies. So that we aren't all going to the tribes at the same general time period asking for feedback. If we use that foundation, then we might make tweaks to it. We might use a subset of it. We might build completely upon it, whatever the case may be. And so there would be much less that we might be seeking for tribes as far as information or feedback to provide. So we've been excited that the Natural Resources Agency undertook that process. I know that they had hoped to have that completed by now when they originally set out. It's taken a little bit longer than expected, but there's also been some really great input and iterations of the agency's policy. The most recent iteration includes not only a draft tribal consultation policy proper, but there's also an appendix to it called Tribal Consultation Best Practices that's been drafted and that agency's been seeking input on. So both of those documents have gone through a review process. We have not yet seen the next iteration. We had hoped that we might see it by now, but it's still in the works. So the versions that are in the meeting binder, Exhibit 7.1 and 7.2, those are the versions that came out in the spring. My understanding is that there's been some pretty significant changes, and so that the next iteration's probably going to look a little bit different. But for the moment, that's what we have for any conversation that we want to have today. I also included Exhibit 7.3, which is our current consultation policy. And it doesn't take more than 30 seconds to read that to realize, boy, there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. So
It served us well.
It certainly has served us. There is room for improvement.
There absolutely is. I like that idea. I really like that idea. Is there still time for tribal comment on CRNAs?
My understanding is that they closed that in July.
Okay.
And they were trying to get a new version out as quickly as possible, but I think they're shooting for like the end of August.
They're looking for a final already.
Okay. They went through a number of tribal consultations.
Okay.
With various tribes.
Okay, so if we still wanted to consult it at the last minute, doesn't hurt to ask.
It doesn't hurt to ask. Yeah, Geneva. I mean, Geneva. She'll let you know.
But you didn't say that.
I'm like, I would just check.
Jeez. Okay. No, I really like that thought process. I think that's excellent.
Yeah. So I wish we had something final that we could build on, but I think we'll have to wait by December. We'll obviously have a final version that we can work with.
Okay.
And have hopefully a robust conversation.
Sounds great. Thank you, Melissa. Let's go ahead and move. Oh, is there any comments on that consultation policy? Did I miss anybody? Okay. Seeing none, let's go ahead and move to item 8, staff and agency updates. And I will again ask Melissa to lead us off.
Thank you. I know that Geneva and Megan have had hopes for being able to participate. They haven't been able to yet today, so I'm guessing that's probably going to be the case for the remainder of the day. So I'll highlight that we have 2 exhibits in the meeting materials under California Natural Resources Agency. We have a draft travel grant administration guidance document. This is a document that Natural Resources Agency has been working on, and they have been requesting input and consultations. And their request is at this point that all consultations be concluded by September 5. And then the second one is Exhibit 8.2, which is the draft tribal stewardship policy, which is also accompanied by a tribal stewardship toolkit. And this was another one of the ones I had referenced earlier today. This has been a huge lift, a lot of work and effort on the part of Geneva and her team. And they are requesting comments and consultation requests no later than September 12th on that one.
Thank you, Melissa. I know, they've held some meetings up at Talowa. And I've had huge conflicts, so I haven't been able to participate, but I'm hearing good things from the discussions.
You heard similar or?
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's a recorded, they had some webinars,
Okay.
you know, it's the toolkit, the stewardship is covering a whole spectrum of things that are really important, and just, they're really working on developing tools to help not only the state agencies, but tribes, and with the stewardship, other entities too, on like how best to work with tribes. And so huge effort on Geneva and her team. And
Well, I think that the state has never tiptoed out to the Ocean Bluff where it is now,
yeah,
with tribes working on indigenous marine steward area. With, you know, the work tribes are doing, the state has to find a way to embrace that. And how does that fit in? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's never happened before. So I'm very happy to see that Geneva and her team are doing that. And again, Fish and Wildlife Department being part of those discussions together with OPC. I think it's a great collaboration with how, because our goals are very closely aligned.
And for those who weren't able to, thank you, Sarah, for mentioning the webinar that they did. It was called Righting Historical Wrongs, Truth, Healing, and Tribal Stewardship. And that link to that webinar is in the attachment exhibit 8.2. So you can go online and listen to that. It really was really incredible. Highly encourage folks. It's a great first step before you dive into the actual stewardship policy.
Thank you.
And then California Ocean Protection Council, our friend Mike Escrow, he's been on vacation for I think 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that. He's been out for a while and he just came back today. So I suspect he's a little bit buried, trying to figure out whether he's coming or going. But for Ocean Protection Council, I did include several documents. The first is a news release. This was super exciting, and I know we heard about this verbally at the commission meeting in June. California's Marine Protected Area Network was recognized by the IUCN as a gold standard for marine conservation. This was I think it was a 7 or 8 year process to bring that to fruition. Huge kudos to Mike and the OPC crew for leading that effort and eventually receiving that recognition. So that's pretty exciting. And then exhibit 8.4, this is a funding program, Sea Level Rise Tribal Cultural Resources funding program that OPC is managing. And this was a news release describing that new funding program. And I believe applications are due, again, September is a very popular time. It's in early September. I think it was the 12th also, but soon. So that's an important one for tribes. And then the third exhibit, exhibit 8.5, is that OPC has announced that they are hiring a tribal affairs and community engagement specialist. And so we included that release and information with a link. So if anyone is interested in working for OPC as a tribal affairs and community engagement specialist, here's your opportunity. All right, and then for department updates, I'm gonna hand it over to the Department's Tribal Liaison, Sarah Fonseca. And then we also have joining us today from the Wildlife Branch, Julia, I think it's Sizek, great. Thank you so much for being here to talk about and answer questions about the chronic waste and disease update that Sarah's got in the.
Oh, yes, thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Chair Converson. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there. Like Melissa mentioned, I'm Sarah Fonseca, the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Tribal Liaison. I'm just going to provide some updates today. We did have a meeting materials in Exhibit 8.6 that covered a little bit more, so I'm just going to talk about some overall highlights that I wanted to point out for those in attendance. We have a upcoming scheduled tribal listening session for the Beaver Management and Restoration Plan. There are 2 scheduled public scoping meetings, and we have 1 tribal listening session. The tribal listening session is scheduled for September 4th. The same material will be shared at those different meetings. It's just one's day, one's evening, and one's tribal. And so that's scheduled for September, very busy September. There will be several regional scoping meetings scheduled across the state for the Deer Conservation and Management Plan. We've held previous listening sessions for that, and so they plan on scheduling those for the fall. In the meeting materials, there's a link on where more information will be available for that. They did do a recent public presentation, and that is linked on the website. That's in the meeting materials. So if you just want to check it out, that was a public presentation though, but things are moving forward with that deer plan. A couple things that did not make it in the meeting materials. We're gonna continue the CISA 5-year status review for the Lost River and Short-Nosed Sucker. We did hold tribal listening sessions for that status review, and we'll continue seeking input from tribes and going through that review status process. We'll be completing the 5-year status review for the Central Valley Spring Run Chinook salmon. It's expected to be received by the commission in December with the presentation in the February 2026 meeting. And so that is anticipating to come through around those dates. Another highlight is the Western Joshua Tree Conservation Act implementation. It's a huge thing. And so there's information in the materials. It mentions the workshop recordings that are available, where it discussed the potential of forming an intertribal Joshua Tree Advisory Committee. You can get those materials. They are provided. There's a contact link, and then in that, if tribes do want to learn more about that, I believe the commission will be making a decision to adopt that plan in tomorrow, Thursday.
To approve the plan
To approve
is tomorrow.
Tomorrow. So that's coming up. And then continued ongoing tribal engagement for the plan amendments. That will be available for tribes to continually have that opportunity. And so the plan might be going through the adoption, but there will be ongoing engagement opportunities. And as always, if there's any questions, you can reach out to me directly. And I can either assist with connecting folks to staff or programs, scheduling meetings or consultations. That email is tribal.liaison@wildlife.ca.gov. Pretty easy. And before I hand it over to Julia, we did have a couple verbal updates, one from Chris and one from Craig. So I'll hand it over to Chris first.
Oh, sure. Hi, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commission staff, tribal representatives, and I'm Chris Stutes, Law Enforcement Division Assistant Chief for Northern Enforcement District. Updates that I had, and I'm sure they'll get expanded upon. My role was rather small, but I did get the opportunity to tag along with Sarah Fonseca to the Tule Boat Festival in Lake County a couple weeks ago. Again, I'll leave up to them for a bigger update. We had 2 officers from the local squad participate as well, and that was really it seemed very well attended. I think it was my first one. Another thing coming out of Lake County for Law Enforcement Division was we were outreached by the Robinson Rancheria seeking enforcement support for cannabis eradication and stream bed alteration pollution. like many tribes we've worked with in the past, sometimes they can be overwhelmed with people trespassing and doing unlawful cultivation on their property. And so it's nice to have another partnership that we were able to help out with Robinson. Yeah, we'll continue that effort. That's all I have.
Thanks.
That's great.
you.
Thank you, Chris.
And then Craig?
So I've got some good news. And there'll be more details on Thursday at the commission meeting where you'll be asked to consider emergency action for quillback for groundfish, because we've got good news on quillback rockfish. And as you recall, a couple of years ago, we had a stock assessment that showed that the population was not doing very well, and we had to take some pretty significant action, or ask the commission to take some pretty significant action to reduce fishing opportunities, both from the department side commercially, the commission side recreationally. We pulled some better data together. We're able to support a full stock assessment for quillback rockfish that indicates that the stock is at a healthy level, still relatively low, but healthy. So we've been working expeditiously. Thank you to our partners at the commission for their patience and flexibility as we've been moving through this and trying to parallel the federal action, both from the department side for commercial and the commission side for recreational, to lift those depth restrictions for the recreational fishery. We sent tribal notifications by mail on July 25th and email July 29th. As you know, when we have emergency regulations, it's hard to get out in front of it for tribes. So we do the best we can just to notify them that this commission will be considering these actions. Long story short, the proposed action will be to remove all depth restrictions. So it's all access, all depth access across all waters north of Point Conception. To add a statewide toothfish, canary, rockfish sub-bag limit. And that is needed because of the greater access to those depths. It would still be zero retention of quillback. And there's a couple other minor pieces in there that we can get into on Thursday, but overall, really good news. And we're just working really quickly to get that opportunity back to anglers, because we know the end of summer, early fall is just such important timing as the weather gets really nice. And that gives them opportunity to spread out, go deep, go shallow. So good news for a change.
That would be for next year.
That will be as soon as we can get approval from OAL. So if the
Okay.
commission approves on Thursday, we've got 5 days.
About 15 days.
What's that?
About 15 days.
So 15 days, so September 1, best case scenario-ish. And so that will be important, and we'll talk about that on Thursday, that, if the commission takes action, we'll get that notice out, but then we also got to inform anglers that they have to wait for the regs to be effective before they start fishing in all the different depths.
So cautiously optimistic for this year.
It's very optimistic.
Okay, awesome. Where are we at on halibut? I know it's a curveball. Have we
You mean
exceeded our quota?
Pacific halibut or California halibut? Pacific halibut.
Pacific.
Yes.
I don't know offhand. My recollection is that the fishing has been poor this year for halibut. But I can bring that to Thursday if
Would
you'd
you
like
do
an
that?
update on Thursday.
I know folks are anxious to hear about that.
Yeah, actually, I could probably look it up right now while you're getting the chronic wasting disease update. Let me see what we got.
Thank you, and sorry for the curveball.
No, it's okay. We like curveballs. Keeps us on our toes.
Thank you, Craig. And now I'd like to introduce Julia Cizik, who is our chronic wasting disease tribal coordinator, here to discuss more about CWD.
Yeah, so I'm a research scientist at the Wildlife Health Lab. I'm a trained cultural anthropologist. And my role is to work with tribes that are interested in partnering with us on chronic wasting disease surveillance. As a refresher, chronic wasting disease is an always fatal neurological disease in deer and elk, and it was detected in California for the first time in 2024 in Inyo and Madera counties. Since those 2024 detections, we've had 2 additional detections, both in and around the town of Bishop, which is the same area where we previously had detections, bringing our total to 4 over the last 2 years. It can be spread among deer and elk, both through direct contact or also through contact with contaminated environments. Animals with the disease don't always show symptoms immediately. It is sort of a progressive disease, so it takes about a year for them to show symptoms. And once they get to that late stage, they start to appear wasted or have the inability to hold their head up, and they're in sort of poor condition. The risk to humans of this disease is low, but not zero, and there are no confirmed cases of human infections, but we do not advise eating meat from positive animals, which of course is important for our partnerships with tribes, as deer are our first food. And so through the program, or I guess through the bit that I run, the Wildlife Health Lab can offer free training, educational materials, technical support, and CWD testing for tribes. So tribes can submit samples from animals on their reservation. That would include roadkill, or from tribal hunters. And currently our only ways to do testing are for animals that are deceased. We cannot do live animal testing. As part of this, we are working with tribes on data sovereignty issues. And so we don't actually ask for the identities of tribal hunters as part of our testing requirements. And that is, through working with tribes that we're able to get only the information about the animals, which is the important part. And then the tribes can exercise their sovereignty in working with their hunters to inform them if there indeed would be a positive test. Thus far, we have 2 tribes that have created CWD testing programs with us, and we're looking forward to getting samples from them as the hunting season ramps up. And with them, we have conducted already or are planning sampling trainings with these tribes to teach them how to take those lymph nodes out, because it can be a little bit of a hard process if you're new to it. And then also as part of that, we have been developing a tribal toolkit, which is sort of just a suite of recommendations from CDFW that tribes can either take or decide not to use, including resources from other tribes across the country that have active CWD programs. And that's just to help tribes make it a lot easier for them to get that information from other places across the US, rather than having to do all that research on their own. And so if you know of any tribes that are interested in cervid management, obviously our deer management plan is also coming up right now, so they can participate in that. Or if they're interested in learning more about CWD, anyone on the call, I am more than happy to speak with them about anything chronic wasting disease.
Thank you. So if a tribe is interested in participating, they should contact you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, or if they just have questions about CWD and want to ask their questions, they don't have to set up a program for testing on their reservation by speaking with me. I'm happy to answer whatever questions they have.
And her info is on the materials. I included it in our update, or they can reach out to me and I click
Okay.
connect.
Great.
We'll also have a booth at Native American Day, and
Oh,
Julie will be
wonderful.
there with 3D model,
Cool.
where you can see the lymph nodes and there's
Yeah.
pictures and.
Yeah, it's a 3D, very heavy 3D printed heads of deer. If that's what you're into, you will have it.
Let's come out.
Yeah, the lymph nodes, well, we have 2 of them. So one of them is like the whole deer neck, and then the lymph nodes come out. And the other one shows you where you break the neck, where you cut through to get to the lymph nodes in the middle. Unfortunately, our 3D models of it make it look a lot easier than it is. It's actually up to your wrist and deer neck. But the training that we did thus far, I was pleasantly surprised by how quickly they got the lymph nodes out. It was awesome.
How serious are we? Do you have any way of quantifying how bad it is?
Yeah, well, so CWD as a disease tends to be rather slow moving just in its progression, but it's also a disease that doesn't really go away because it doesn't go away.
Okay.
Because it can stay on the landscape. So basically an animal, if it defecates or if it, pees in a scrape, then another animal can go up to that scrape and contract the disease from that. And there's evidence that suggests that prions, which are the infectious agent of the disease, can stay up in the environment for 10 years or more. So this is a disease where what you want to do is have early action to try to reduce and limit the spread of the disease as much as possible, because once it becomes everywhere, then that's sort of game over. The other sort of important thing that we can try to do as CDFW is to keep that prevalence low. So if you can keep prevalence low, by which I mean under 5% or under 3% or even 1% of your goal, then you still have folks who are hunting. So there's evidence, scholarship that suggests that once you get to that prevalence rate of above 20%, hunters, cease to participate in hunting or become less enthusiastic. And hunting is one of the main ways that we have as a mechanism to try to control the spread of this disease.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And if you have other more specific disease questions, you should talk to Brandon, who is our scientific, veterinarian expert, because I'm not trained as a scientist.
And will Brandon be there on the 27th as well with you?
I don't think so. He normally doesn't participate in those sorts of events.
Oh, you should make him go.
American Day is amazing.
Well, I do have a PhD, just not in deer things.
Yeah.
Dear guts.
Okay, well, that was very interesting.
I can answer your question.
Okay.
So as of July 27th, so we're a couple weeks behind, and I could try to get, if we've got an update, we were at 16,731 pounds of the 39,000 plus pounds.
Say that number again.
little under 17,000 pounds of the
Okay.
39,000.
Okay, so we're okay.
We got a ways, yeah, fishing's been slow.
Okay. Thank you.
And Julie ran the CWD booth at the Tulip. That was my softball pitch to get the update on how that went. Was it well?
Yeah, I mean, we had a bunch of folks come up and ask questions. We also had a CWD booth at Chagone Days as well at Robinson Rancheria.
Cool.
Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's it for our department updates.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, well then if it's all right, we'll move on to commission staff.
Yes, please.
We have a number of exhibits, for folks who, are trying to access information. We have exhibit 8.7 is the Wildlife Resources Committee work plan. RA will talk a little bit about that. Exhibit 8.8 is the Marine Resources Committee work plan. Each committee has a work plan. Susan will talk a little bit about that. We also have a commission perpetual timetable for rulemaking. This is the same exhibit for those who are participating in tomorrow and Thursday's commission meeting. That's the same. These are all the same exhibits that you'll find in the commission meeting binder. There's the commission meeting agenda for the next 2 days, as well as proposed agenda items for the October 8 and 9 meeting that we talked about earlier. And then we're hiring a position as well. I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But just as general background, for those who may not be familiar with the commission and its structure, the Fish and Game Commission has 5 members. It meets 6 times a year. Typically, we also have a couple of teleconferences. So 6 to 8 times a year. That's where decision-making takes place. The commission does not make any decisions outside of those commission meetings. In between the commission meetings, we have 3 committees. This is one of them, the Travel Committee, and I mentioned the Wildlife Resources and Marine Resources Committees. And the purpose of the committees is really to create an opportunity for dialogue to take place, for a conversation around issues that will ultimately make their way to the commission. Commission meetings are pretty formal. There's limited opportunity for dialogue. By the time we get to a commission meeting with a requesting a decision, we're 90% of the way there. So it's really difficult to make any significant changes prior to that. And so these committee meetings become a really important opportunity for helping to shape the recommendations that ultimately go to the commission. So I'm gonna hand it over to Art, talk a little bit about one of those committees, the Wildlife Resources Committee, and some of the things that they're working on right now in preparation for upcoming actions by the commission.
Okay, the Wildlife Resources Committee, the next meeting for the Wildlife Resources Committee is scheduled for September 11th. It will be here in Sacramento. Not in this room, but in one of the adjoining rooms here. It's gonna be a pretty busy meeting. We've got all of our periodic and annual regulations to go through. So we'll have potential recommendations for upland game bird hunting, big game hunting, waterfowl hunting, Central Valley sport fishing and Klamath River Basin sport fishing, and department lands, as well as initial vetting and discussion on the new cycle of inland sport fishing regulations. We will continue our discussion and potentially have a recommendation on bear hunting. We had a robust discussion on that last time. And the department will be recommending and introducing and recommending a new potential upcoming regulation on rattlesnake exhibition. So we've got a pretty busy schedule for September 11th and hope to see you there. If you have any questions about the WRC or anything, including anything on the agenda or anything that we're working on, feel free to get a hold of me and happy to talk to you.
Okay, and Susan, from Marine Resources.
Thank you. Thanks. So the Marine Resources Committee met 4 weeks ago and covered a number of topics, and the commission will be receiving a report out on those this Thursday. The next Marine Resources Committee meeting is scheduled for November. So November 6th is the beginning of that meeting. And the topics the department will be providing an additional update on the red abalone restoration plan that you heard about today, as well as potentially continuing the conversation about marine protected areas petitions. It depends on what the commission decides to do, and that'll shape what happens at the November meeting. But other topics that are continuing to be on the committee's work plan include kelp restoration and management plan development. That's a topic of interest to this committee as well. And evaluation of bycatch in the California halibut fishery and using trawl gear. Those are a couple of examples of topics that are currently and most recently updated for that work, for that committee.
Great, thank you. So also in the meeting materials, I mentioned the rulemaking timetable, otherwise known as the perpetual timetable for rulemaking. And that document is really important. It plays a key role between the committees and the commission meetings. Because if you're interested in the types of regulations that the commission is adopting, that document, while complicated, it looks very complicated, but once you take a look at the columns and the right navigation area, it's actually not as complicated as it seems. So literally you have dates across the top, and then you have the different rulemakings down on the left-hand side. And so it gives you an idea of the timeline for when the commission is taking action on certain things, including when the committees are actively engaged in discussion about those subjects. So for instance, if you were interested in salmon, and we have a number of rulemakings that the commission does on salmon, you could come to this table and see when is Wildlife Resources Committee going to be talking about, for instance, salmon in the Central Valley rivers or salmon up on the Klamath. And you could see which meetings that's taking place to engage in that dialogue about what the commission might do on that topic. And then you can also see when it's expected to go back to the commission for a notice to let the public know ultimately what's the proposed decision that the commission is considering. So I'm not gonna go into a lot more detail about it, but just know that that's an important tool to use if you're interested in the various regulations that the commission is considering and working on. And staff is always, willing to, talk with folks and walk them through the document and help them understand, where to find information. So for the commission's August 13-14 meeting, as was mentioned several times already, it is a busy meeting. There's a lot on that agenda. I'm not gonna walk through it. But just know that, again, a lot of the work, like today, these conversations, the MRC meeting that was recently held, the WRC meeting that's coming up in September, those meetings have played a role in a lot of these agenda items that ultimately ended up on this agenda for the next 2 days. So put that in there for folks who might want to take a look at it and see if there's anything of interest. Feel free to come and join us tomorrow or Thursday. We do divide the 2 days between the commission meetings, between wildlife and inland fisheries on one day and marine items on the other day. Naturally tends to divide out relatively evenly, although sometimes it's an awkward mix, but generally it's a good division. And then also, again, related to commission agendas, the commission at each of its meetings will approve the agenda items for the next meeting. In this case, the August meeting, the commission will be approving a list of agenda items for its October meeting. And that's agenda item or exhibit number 8.11, 8.11. So if any of those topics are of interest, just know those are coming up in October, and that some of those topics are being discussed actually at the WRC meeting in September. And then last but not least, super excited, for those who are not aware, our limited term environmental scientist position ended on the 1st of August. We have a new limited term position that we just flew a week ago. I included a little flyer that you can take a look at, gives you information, gives you a link to where to go, get details about the job. If you know anyone who might be interested in that position, really encourage them to take a look and apply. Anything else we want to highlight? No. No, okay.
What does that, how does that help? Just explain to the audience, in case they don't know, the limited term environmental scientist.
Yeah, so our limited term environmental scientist has, our first was Kimmy Rogers, the last 2 years. She was our first. And that position has really been focused on trying to help us dig ourselves out of a giant aquaculture hole. We had a stack of requests from current leaseholders for changes and amendments to their aquaculture leases. And so working with our colleagues at the department, Kimmy has really helped advance and move some of those forward. We also, for the first time in over 25 years, had received 3 brand new requests and applications for an aquaculture lease.
Wow.
So needless to say, none of our colleagues in the department, none of us at the commission had ever been involved in a new lease process. And of course, a lot has changed over the years in statute and regulation in California. So pretty steep learning curve for a number of years as we figured out how to make that work. And Kimmy was super helpful with that. So that's a big part, has been a big part of that job. It will continue to be for at least the next year as we continue moving more of those projects off our plate, get the aquaculture advancing in the way that it needs to. Another big piece of that job is the experimental fishing permit program and working directly with the Department of Fish and Wildlife on that, helping advance that. Of course, obviously the Marine Resources Committee meetings, the environmental scientist helps in the preparations and the development of materials for those meetings as well as commission meetings.
Nice.
And I'd say those are probably the 3 biggest, those are the 3 big ticket items. Lots of little projects here and
Very
there.
important person.
But it's especially because the commission has a lot, when you look at the responsibilities in the California Fish and Game Code and other codes in California, the commission's responsibilities are really heavy on the marine side, much heavier than on the inland and wildlife side. So the workload, it's more than one person can handle. And so having the Sea Grant Fellow and having an environmental scientist to help assist the marine advisor has been huge. Huge. So we're eager to get someone on board and keep those things moving forward again and allow Susan to have a life outside of work.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to our colleagues at the department who helped make that happen.
Great. Okay. Future agenda items, is that where we're at?
It is. And so I spoke about work plans before. We obviously have a work plan as well. It's exhibit 9.1 in your meeting materials. And as you can imagine, with the fact that we don't currently have a tribal advisor dedicated to, well, ours is a tribal advisor in liaison that focuses not only on the tribal committee, but also on establishing and maintaining our relationships with California's tribes and also managing our consultations. We don't have that position filled at the moment. So we do not, as your staff, have recommendations for new items to put on the tribal committee work plan. What we do have is what was approved by the commission at the last meeting in June. This was, we had identified what we thought would be the agenda items for December. Those will be revisited at the October meeting by the commission. But this is the initial list that they had approved for this meeting and for the draft for the December meeting. So when we get to October, we will update this based on what's taken place over the last couple of months for any changes to it.
Okay.
But at the moment, this is what is proposed for the next few months.
Great.
Anything that you see that you want to change?
Not at all.
No.
I think taking on discussion and feedback on the petitions is something we're going to do, but I don't think it needs to be on the work plan at the moment.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the questions that the commission asked about was, you know, when and how the tribal committee would want to be involved in the petition review process, and without really having a game plan yet for what, you know, the evaluation timing and whether that's going to be at the commission level or at the MRC level, the initial reviews. Little challenging, but we as your staff have always assumed that you and this committee would have a role in reviewing those petition evaluations.
Yeah, I think so. But I don't necessarily think it needs to go on our work plan. I think as needed, it could be.
It'll be added.
Yeah, on the agenda. Yeah, okay.
And that will definitely come soon. Probably not as soon as December, but for sure April.
Probably not December.
Probably not.
Well, although,
Depends.
yeah.
See how the conversation
We
goes.
might be able to have some,
Thursday.
you know, if we want to prioritize some of the tribal
Yeah.
discussions and we can get some
Yeah.
consultation scheduled, that might be.
That might work.
Happy to help. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and move to our last item. General public comment for items not on the agenda. Do I have any one online who would like to make a general public comment on an item not on this agenda?
Again, just feel free to either unmute yourself and or turn on your video, or you can raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand function if you are interested in providing general public comment. Anybody in the room? That was no.
Don't think so. Not see any hands raised.
Sorry.
Oh, wait, Keith. Hi, Keith. You've been very quiet today.
Yes. You can unmute yourself, Keith.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Hello. Yeah.
Hi, So good to see everyone. I don't have too much to add. It's just been a really wonderful meeting, and I'm really thankful to listen to it here. We have a petition 2023-23 MPA that we are requesting a new state marine reserve, and I had brought this before to the tribal committee, as I don't really know the ways or means to get this done, but we'd like to get an indigenous place name for our marine protected area. And I submitted a written comment and supplemental comments on this, but we asked the Rumsen Ohlone tribe representative who was in Monterey doing a abalone festival dance, which was just wonderful. And I asked Linda what was the name of this place, and she said it was Sukilta. And so that I would request that would be the name for our state marine reserve. So Sukilta State Marine Reserve in Monterey. And I think there's one other petition that is also naming a new MPA. But yeah, that is our attempt, I think, to engage with Indigenous people to name this place. And we just wanted to ask if that was accessible and acceptable. And also, what does that mean? I don't know what it means. What does Sukilta mean? So I'm kind of curious about that. So that's all. That's my comments. Thank you. Have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you, Keith. I'm not sure if you were on early on that was our first agenda item today.
I was on then, but I just didn't comment at that time. I had written a comment for that time.
Okay. I think that's a conversation that we need to have. I don't think I can respond to it necessarily today.
Yes.
But I think you heard my comments earlier about the tribally focused or sponsored petitions. So
Yes.
I think just some clarification from my knowledge would be really helpful. And I applaud your efforts for sure.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I thought that because we were naming a place, according to your questions, that it would have qualified as being a tribally focused petition, but it's not really. We're not sponsored by a tribe or anything like that. So I understand your reasoning for that, and I agree with that. I think that's a good point to be made. So yeah, something that.
I'm not saying that I don't have an answer for you doesn't mean it's no.
Okay.
My recommendation, I don't have a recommendation at the moment, but I think as Fish and Wildlife explores each petition, I think there's going to be dialogue, and I'm happy to speak offline with you about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, Keith. Anyone else for items not on today's agenda? With that, Melissa and staff, you guys did an amazing job, as always. Really appreciate all your hard work. You make it seem so easy.
A huge thanks to our colleagues at the department for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner.
Great meeting. All right, thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.